Good morning, I'm Mike Naso from the IPR video update page on YouTube with the latest on extremely dangerous Hurricane Irma, which is now a Category 4 hurricane taking aim at Key West, Florida. You can see the satellite imagery shows a strengthening hurricane. It looks a little strange with the inner eye kind of spinning about there. Clearly we have some sort of outer eye wall building core which is intensifying the winds as the pressure drops, and it has now gone from 120 miles per hour up to 130 miles per hour, which means it is now, once again, a Category 4 hurricane. Here's the latest on Hurricane Irma. As of 2 a.m. Eastern Time, there'll be a new track and discussion at 5 a.m. from the National Hurricane Center. Hurricane Irma was at 23.7 north, 81.3 west. Maximum sustained winds were increased to 130 miles per hour. It's moving slowly northwest at 6 miles per hour, but note, northwest is finally having a northward component to its track after all these days of watching it move just steadily west right into Cuba. It is now turning northwest. The pressure has been dropping. It's been extrapolated by the Air Force as low as the 926 millibar range, officially 931 millibars. But again, that's a moot point. This is an extremely dangerous Category 4 hurricane. Now, the track as of 11 p.m. had it going over the Florida Keys and then continuing right offshore or slightly on the coastline. The way the coast slopes and the angle of approach from Irma, it was wondering where would landfall take place. Well, since that time, we're beginning to see some indication of a shift a little bit further east, maybe. Perhaps it will come ashore. We're not too sure just yet. However, there's a lot of factors going into this. Now, you can see the wind field. We're beginning to get hurricane force winds in the Florida Keys. Just had a gust from Mark Sudduth from HurricaneTrack.com. He had a gust over hurricane force in Marathon, Florida, and of course the core of the strongest winds, the Category 4 winds, right around the eye of the hurricane. Tropical storm force winds extending upward towards Lake Okeechobee at this point. There's the latest radar out of Key West. You can see our extremely dangerous eye wall approaching the Florida Keys, and it's continued that motion now a little bit better pace towards the northwest than we saw before, right in the general direction of the lower Florida Keys. When we zoom in, obviously Key West, I mean, you guys are just getting hammered right now. The Florida Keys, no power on the Keys, reports of up to 40-foot waves. It's going to get progressively worse. If you are watching this update and you left the Florida Keys, be happy that you did so. This is a very, very historic hurricane, historically strong and dangerous. You can see Marathon, you're getting a little bit of a break currently, a little dry slot here. However, you guys just gusted over hurricane force, so that might not be indicative of what we're seeing on the radar, but it certainly is taking place there. And Key West, you could see the eye wall with those tremendous Category 4 winds fast approaching you. Also Big Pine Key, other little keys here. Anybody who's been to the Keys knows that there's a million of them. Not literally, but figuratively speaking. And so all these areas, Summerlin Key, Big Pine Key, Big Coppock Key, you guys are right squarely in the path of this extremely powerful hurricane. One of the stronger storms to impact the Florida Keys, certainly in the last 50 years or so. You can see the computer models continue to take it right over the mid-lower Keys there and then straight up. But again, because of the angle of approach from Irma, we're not sure exactly where quote-unquote landfall will take place. It could be further south towards Naples and Marco Island. It could be further north towards Clearwater and Tampa. However, anywhere up and down the coast, you need to be on alert, obviously, because the wind field is large, as I showed you before, and that's going to be spreading throughout the peninsula. We already have many, many people without power, and that's only going to go up. Now, the bad news for an area, say, for example, Charlotte Harbor, which was devastated by a Cat 4 Charlie 13 years ago, or Tampa Bay, which hasn't had a direct hit from a major hurricane since 1921, and hasn't been impacted directly in several decades, you guys are going to have to worry if the hurricane moves a little bit to your west and you get the onshore flow pushing storm surge into these bays, because with a strong hurricane like this on the west coast of Florida, the surge can be tremendous. And when I say tremendous, I mean tremendous. Look at the inundation levels, up to 9 feet, maybe more, all up and down the west coast here, and all these little barrier islands and area. By the way, I fished off Marco Island with my father 2 years ago. These are very shallow, low-lying islands and little bays and whatnot, and they're very susceptible to that high surge. So areas like Marco Island, Naples, North Naples, Bonita Springs, Bonita Beach, areas of Fort Myers Beach, to say nothing of Sanibel and Captiva Islands, all under the gun for a potential for a very dangerous storm surge, upwards of 10 to 15 feet, to say nothing of the inundation that'll occur on some of the low-lying keys in Florida. So we have the wave heights crashing in the Keys, we have the storm surge threat, heavy rain, and severe weather. We have a tornado watch. This one's until noon. You can see a lot of these heavy bands moving up through West Palm Beach, all the way up to Melbourne. You guys are getting heavy weather associated with Hurricane Irma. Of course, the heaviest weather is around the eye, where the Category 4 intensity is, and that's going into the Florida Keys over the next couple of hours. So we're going to watch that very carefully. And she might intensify more. She appears to be strengthening. The eye has been shrinking slightly and getting better organized. And you can see Irma has very hot waters here in the Florida Keys, some of the hottest waters in the entire Atlantic Ocean, right around South Florida. So she's taking heed of all that energy potential, and with the tightening, coiling eye having left Cuba, we are seeing intensification. What we have feared with some of the models we're showing is taking place. So again, we'll all be watching it throughout the morning. Obviously, this is a very long-tracked, historic, devastating hurricane. We saw what it did to the Caribbean. We know what it did to Cuba yesterday as a Category 5. Now it's a Cat 4 taking aim at the Florida Keys. If you are on the Florida Keys, you probably don't see this update because you're without power. But if you left the Keys, have people who stayed in the Keys, hope they hunker down and get to safety. They need to be on the alert and ready now as a Category 4 hurricane is roaring up towards Key West. I'm Mike Nasel with the latest on Hurricane Irma. I'll see you next time.